Every once in a while, Marvel Comics, despite not being very good right now, I think they have one decent ongoing series, and that's Incredible Hulk. They'll deliver a week that is so bad where everything wrong with the way that Marvel Comics produce books these days is out there, present for everyone to see. And this was one of those weeks. And I know I can hear you, Yule Carter, out there saying, Wes, you ignorant slut. It's a 5th release week. It's not supposed to be a big week. You've got a point there, and I'll get to that eventually. But also, pipe down, Yule, because Daddy's about to cook. I got some stuff to get off my chest about just how bad Marvel Comics are these days. Yes, it was a 5th release week, but they also had their flagship book come out this week. They had their most exciting title of the entire year that hasn't lived up to the hype came out this week. We had a layup comic book that should have been the easiest thing in the world to produce come out this week. All of it was bad. The best book of the week was by a legend, no doubt about that, but it wasn't even that good. How bad can Marvel Comics get? Because every time I think it can't get any worse, it absolutely does get worse. Obviously, starting off, we got to talk about the flagship book, ASM, Amazing Spider-Man number 60, Zeb Wells' swan song, saying farewell to Amazing Spider-Man. Started out somewhat promising with Tombstone, got bad quick, only got worse over the long haul. And we get to this final issue, and they're finally going to settle it with Tombstone. Was anything settled? Nope. Was the art even good by John Romita Jr.? Absolutely not. Some of the worst art I've seen from John Romita Jr. since Superman Year One, which is an atrocious comic book to look at, and this is almost equally as bad. We got Peter Parker eating pizza with Aunt May, and now they're friends again. Hadn't seen Aunt May, I don't know, in a fucking year. When's the last time we actually saw Aunt May in this comic book? And it was just the biggest nothing burger, and this run has been unequivocally awful. Perhaps the worst Spider-Man run in the history of comic books. I'm actually going to talk to Doc about that this weekend. What does he think? Is this the worst ASM run ever? I think it's in the running for just how bad this was. And guess what? I didn't even have it as bad as most people. Because once I got through the story and it said end, I closed the book and moved on with my life. I didn't realize there was another 40 fucking pages of Zeb Wells Spider-Man writing all a bunch of like stupid short stories about Chasm with Wolverine in there and fucking Paul and all the other stuff that you didn't like, featuring pretty good artists. You know, at least Ed McGuinness was in there. Todd Knock was in there. There's some pretty darn good artists in there. But there was an extra 30 pages of Zeb Wells' story that you didn't want to read. And of course, they overcharged you for it because it's a milestone. This is the finale of Zeb Wells' Spider-Man run. This is a big deal. And it absolutely sucked. This is the flagship book. You cannot fuck up Spider-Man to this degree. This is how bad it is. If you ever go to Comic Book Roundup, there are some reviewers out there, not professional reviewers, but just fans that like to do lots of reviews. The Spider-Boy is one of them. The Spider-Boy probably hates my channel. He's very, very optimistic, likes a lot of stuff that I don't think is very good. Even the Spider-Boy, listen to what he had to say about ASM 60 this week. I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this, but I think this ending was just as bad, if not worse, than Nick Spencer's Spider-Man. This run, for me, feels like watching the atrocious Joker sequel where it's a big punchline. We think there will be a satisfying conclusion to the Tombstone story. It wasn't. Literally nothing happens. Tombstone doesn't get punished. He literally wins while Spider-Man suffers. The only thing that does improve is Aunt May accepting Peter Parker has to ask Spider-Man for help, which makes him be in danger. At the end, Aunt May and Peter are close again. But again, it was not built up. Chasm is evil again, which makes the Winkler arc useless. The art is generally ugly. The only thing I like is the Wolverine story. I do not care if Peter Parker and Mary Jane are never getting back together. I think as long as Nick Lowe and the Marvel editorial are around, it's never going to happen. But there has to be a good, engaging story for this. And it sucks seeing Ultimate Spider-Man and other series get good, satisfying character writing, but not main Earth 616 Peter Parker. Overall, for real, I am done with the series. I have to accept that this series is not for me, and I'm never going to be reading it again. I only read the last arc so I could critique it fairly to the best of my ability and not be a mindless hater. I felt that this series was bad because Spider-Man loses a lot, inconsistent art, the bad writing stories, and the action leaves much to be desired. Even if Joe Kelly does well with his Spider-Man series, I probably won't read it. I hope people have fun and enjoy this series. That is one fucking despondent Spider-Boy on that one. And that is the general tenor and feeling, I think, of a lot of people at the end of this Amazing Spider-Man run. Absolutely sucks. They can't get anything right. They can't even put enough effort into Amazing fucking Spider-Man to make it a good, compelling story. Of course, Amazing Spider-Man has been terrible for a very long time, since the day, essentially, that Zeb Wells arrived. Is anybody excited for 8 Deaths of Spider-Man? I'm not. We'll see what happens there. I'll read it because it's the mainline book. So it starts out with the flagship book being awful. It continues on with what was supposed to be the best Marvel comic of the year, the one I was the most excited for. Wolverine Revenge, supposed to be an A-list creative pairing. How could it go wrong with Jonathan fucking Hickman and Greg Capullo returning to Marvel Comics to illustrate a Wolverine comic with basically him just fighting people the entire time? They've even managed to mess up the most promising, foolproof book that they put out the entire year. I assumed the worst that they could do on Wolverine Revenge with Capullo and Hickman was pretty good. It ain't close to pretty good. It is awful. And let's forget the stuff that Doc and I talked about when we reviewed Wolverine Revenge #1. Like, wow, this continuity is really jacked up. It's hard to engage in the story because you're constantly confused when it's happening. I've continued on, and you don't get as many of the continuity blips and errors and where the hell does this happen? The story just sucks. I don't think Hickman is writing this. It's such an amateurish script. There's not a good line of dialogue in it. Things just happen because Wolverine needs to move. That's what the last issue was him going from place to place to place. And this issue is more of that, except this time he runs into people and murders them. And that's all he's doing. There's even a point where I think Hickman thought it was being clever, where you have Deadpool and Wolverine on the top of this nuclear reactor, very reminiscent of that stupid Wolverine origin story, obviously with a very different version of Deadpool in there. It feels like Wolverine's about to forgive Deadpool. Deadpool's so happy, and you're not buying it the entire time. It's like, okay, he's about to throw him into the fucking nuclear reactor. And somehow Capullo's art isn't good in this. Like, it's not terrible, but it's not great. It's just, it's low effort, low T fucking Capullo on this. I don't know why it looks so weird. Admittedly, I like Capullo more on masked heroes. I think he works much better on a Spawn or a Batman and everything. But most of Wolverine's face is masked. Why doesn't it look right? How do you fuck up Jonathan Hickman and Greg Capullo getting together for a Wolverine book? It feels foolproof. Yet, of course, Marvel Comics fucked it up because it's Marvel Comics in 2024. They literally cannot do anything right. Why are they even putting books out? They're not even trying at this point. Of course, we also got stuff that we knew would be terrible, but somehow ended up even worse than we anticipated it would be. We got another issue of NYX from Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing. The entire book is like Prodigy's manifesto on why humans don't understand mutant culture, as he's out using his powers to tag buildings with Krakoan hieroglyphs in flowers and stuff like that. And then you have the real star of the book, obviously being Miss Marvel, because she's got to be like an A-list mutant. She's like, I know who the Krakoan is. It used to be Hellion. And they've shown me when this stuff is going to happen because they want me to know. And look, I have a map. It's got an X on it. Of course it's going to happen here. And it's just so poorly done. Why are they still giving these two jabronis chances? I wouldn't trust them to write a Mother's Day card, let alone an entire fucking comic book that's supposed to entertain people. This book is absolute trash. It wouldn't surprise me if this gets canceled earlier than Dazzler, and Dazzler's a 4-issue fucking miniseries. That's how bad this thing has been. I cannot believe. I can't believe Tom Brevoort, as incompetent as he is, he's been around a while. He should know what a terrible story looks like. And he should have been able to suss this one out from the very beginning. But that's why he's the leading member of the Legion of Douchebags, along with Nick Lowe and Jordan White. If you're talking about the Legion of Doofuses, that's Jordan White and all of his idiots over at the X-Men line. Of course, they've been disbanded. But the Legion of Douchebags are still there, ruining comic books left and right. And of course, even there's like stories that started out pretty good that now have turned into absolute crap. Should have seen this one coming. I enjoyed, to a degree, Neymar #1. I thought Neymar #2 was pretty darn good. I recommended it here on the channel. Jason Aaron promised that he was going to give Namor the Punisher treatment, changing Namor's motivations and what makes Namor this week. And all of a sudden he's not regal. He doesn't want to be a king. He's a man of the people. He's killing stingrays to feed seaweed farmers at the bottom of the ocean. And he's taking lashes from his father because he's defiant, or I'm sorry, his grandfather, because he's defiant, because he wants to help the people. Is that who Neymar is? Does Neymar always looking out for the little guy? I don't think that's who Neymar is or ever was. And then you get him like teaming up, or I guess not teaming up, but meeting. It takes you a minute to figure it out, but it's coral. Like the simple organism that grows on reefs and stuff. It's a coral man that has a coral army of seaweed men and enormous whales. And then they're like, the elder whales hear the crying of another elder whale. Are you going to let this happen? And Neymar goes over there, and all of a sudden there's Orca, and he's fighting them. And then all of a sudden dudes just start grabbing pieces of whale meat and start eating. Like, what the fuck is going on here? So not only did he like ruin the origin, or not get the origin of who Neymar is or where he came from, he's just got people grabbing whale blubber left and right and tossing it in their mouths like, we need to eat. And he's like, oh my goodness, you guys are hungry. But the elder whales, I gotta stop World War C. It's a giant clusterfuck. This entire week was a giant clusterfuck. It was so hard to read. Even the stuff that you thought could be good. Neymar #2 was a good comic book. Now we're on issue #4. It absolutely sucks. The stuff that you knew at a bare minimum would be readable. Wolverine Revenge, not very readable. Even the biggest layup comic in the history of the world, you don't need to put thought into Predator versus Black Panther. Fuck, I mean, Ben Percy, he didn't really nail Predator versus Wolverine, but he nailed it enough for it to be good and readable. I don't think he nailed the ending on that one, but it was a lot of fun. It was a good book. You know, there were a couple of artists in there I didn't particularly like, but he kind of got it. And you're into this Predator versus Black Panther, and he like overthought this to such a degree that it's no fun. There's no fun to be had in the comic book. And it certainly doesn't help that this is one of the, if not the worst illustrated Marvel comic I've seen in years. I don't know Sean Damian Hill personally. I got nothing against you if you're watching this, or if you're like a Sean Damian Hill fan. But that's fucking bad art. It's ridiculous. You're having these moments that are supposed to look cool as the Predators reaching through like the Wakandan force field and grabbing her. And it just looks ridiculous because it's so poorly illustrated. And we're supposed to think of the Predators as these big threats. Well, you can't have Okoye not be a badass. So she's already killed more Predators than even Black Panther has by herself, single-handedly. Just wiping Predators out. Am I supposed to be rooting for the Black Panthers? Or am I supposed to be rooting for the Predators? Because it looks like the Black Panther and his crew are wiping everybody out with ease. You even had Shuri. In the comic book, Shuri's like 80 pounds, maybe? Sure, she's a genius and she could technically put anything together. She murders a Predator with ease by herself. Just takes him right out. Steals his fucking helmet, puts it on, and then she's like, oh, yes, this helmet is clearly computer technology. Let me hack the helmet with my eyeballs or something. It's Predator versus Black Panther, the ultimate fucking popcorn comic book. You throw a decent hook in there. You have the Predator and the Black Panther come into conflict, you know, wipe out half the Dora Milaje, capture the other half, including Okoye, have them held in pens, try to ransom them for the fucking vibranium that you couldn't get when you opened it up and arrived in Wakanda for the first time, and then have fucking Black Panther with the aid of Shuri, you know, in his ear, figuring out how to take him down. This stuff is really easy to write, like not complicated whatsoever. That wasn't enough for Ben Percy. He had to like overthink the homework, and it fucking sucks. It's not very good. There's one book I read from Marvel this week. I read 5 or 6 books. There's one book that I didn't think was atrocious, that I didn't think was awful. And it was Deadpool Team Up. Rob Liefeld writing and illustrating. Like, I love his art, and this book looks like $1 million, but he's not a good writer, not in comparison to someone like a Hickman. And essentially, Deadpool Team Up is almost the exact same comic book as Wolverine Revenge, except it was fun. At least there's some pithy dialogue in there. I don't know why they're fighting as much as they are, but hey, there's some good moments. And somehow Liefeld, well, not somehow, Liefeld is a legendary artist, but Liefeld's art looked better than fucking Greg Capullo this week. I couldn't believe it. Why is Deadpool Team Up from Rob Liefeld, the best written comic book from Marvel this week. He was writing circles around everybody at Marvel. That shouldn't happen because Rob Liefeld isn't a good writer. And if you go over to DC Comics, they had a small week. I think they produced 6 comic books. 2 of them I would recommend. The Penguin special, just because of the short original story from Jeremy Adams, which shockingly was good. I didn't think he would be able to do villains very well, but he fucking nailed Penguin. And then there was like a Poison Ivy Swamp Thing like team-up book that was really, really good. They did, like, G. Will Wilson did, like, atmospheric horror really, really well. I was surprised how good it was. They put out 6 books. 2 of them were worth reading. Marvel put out twice as many as that, and I would say none of them were worth reading, unless you just want some fun popcorn-type stuff with some really cool art and Deadpool Team Up. But the story's nothing to write home about. There's a couple of funny lines. He keeps calling Deadpool Pool Boy or whatever. But it was like, it wasn't even good. Like, this is what's wrong with Marvel. There's no excitement around it because they're not delivering anything except disappointment left and right. And this week sucked. And I hope you were schooled, Jewel Carter. You called me an ignorant slut earlier in the video. It wasn't very nice. Oh, man. But I was very, very frustrated. I had to get it off my chest. I couldn't take it anymore. I was like, I feel like I'm taking fucking crazy pills every time I start reading Marvel books. We haven't recommended a new Marvel comic book on the Best of the Week show in like 3 weeks. That's ridiculous with the amount of output that they have. Now, I understand it's a 5th release week, but they put out big stuff. They put out the flagship. They put out their Wolverine special with the dynamic creative team. They put out their fucking Predator book. You know, they put out their Neymar special with Jason Aaron's supposed to be a superstar, and they all sucked. If you appreciate what I'm doing here, bring an honest perspective to these comic books and just how bad Marvel was this week, and you would like to support me in my mission here on Think Critical YouTube, I appreciate that. And I hope to see you very soon at Think Critical Patreon. There's a link in the video description. That's the best way to support the channel. You go there, you sign up for the tier that you want, you get lots of extra podcasts. We've got Q&As, we got polls, we got all kinds of stuff, exclusive videos for you waiting there, more West than you could ever handle. Hope to see you there very, very, very soon.